Breaking the shackles of expectations, I soar free, I fly high. I may win, face defeat, or just get by, but I own my story. I define my destiny, my dreams, my being. I walk to my own beat and sing to my own song. Never mind the conversations around me, about me. Words of hate may become the wind beneath my wings. I'm not an afterthought, never a footnote. I am the headline, the punchline. I sweat my days and breathe in the nights. I laugh, I tear up, I tread through, I get tired, but never to give up and never to give in. I live my adventure. I write my own story.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the Immigrant Podcast. My name is Martin, an immigrant for immigrants. Our job here is to advocate for immigrant issues across the globe to bring you content that is informative, energetic, gets you thinking, and above all, gives you nuggets that allow you to become successful in life. In our show today, we have the very honorable Gauthami, who is a child advocate out of the city of Dallas in Texas. Ms. Gauthami, you write your story, and you write your story because I'm presuming you were raised in a family that absolutely loved and cared for you. What did your childhood look like?
For the most part, I think I grew up in a very healthy, loving, supportive childhood, given the fact I'm a first generation Indian immigrant. I moved to this country almost around 4 or 5 years old. And I have many times I had thought, okay, why did my parents bring me here? Why do I need to adjust to a new culture? But I see what they did, and it was out of love. It was out of sacrifice to give their children a better world, a better life that at that time maybe India could not give us.
The journey of immigrants is provoked by many situations. I've always thought for some people it's war, for others is escaping poverty, for others is healthcare or health related issues. And for others, it's just looking for safety. Now, now, when your parents migrated to the US, what are some of the things as a young person you initially started struggling with?
The ability to fit in and assimilate and integrate. For any immigrant, I think it's a tug of war balancing two cultures. I always say I'm a piece of cheese between two pieces of bread, about a brown piece of bread and a white piece of bread. So rather than just sitting on one piece of bread, I choose to melt in both. Does that make sense?
It does. But how as a kid did you figure that out?
I had to learn. I fell, I got up, I struggled. I'm not going to lie. I struggled being in this country. And I think I struggled up until my, middle adulthood, up until my late 20s, early 30s, because, when your parents leave a country that they know so well, right? The language, the traditions, and coming here and being able to balance that, it's hard to do. You want to fit in with your American friends, but you don't want to lose the trust and the hope of your Indian parents. So it's like, okay, how do I do this? How do I maintain this balance? But you take the best of both worlds and you just blend it all
Right.
in together.
I want to assume the immigration journey is very different for boys in comparison to girls. I want, and I wish I had data for this, but I want to imagine that girls have a slightly difficult time settling in compared to boys who can really and easily quickly just get into it from spots and just facing each other and everything boyhood. But what does that look like for a girl who's looking to fit in from another country into America?
Hard. It is very, very difficult. And as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, I struggled for a long time, whether it was the color of my skin, whether I was the only brown girl in my school, whether I smelled like Indian food going to school, being able to fit in with my white friends was very hard. Was very hard. And it created this confusion and this constant mind game. Like, and you go home questioning yourself, where do I fit in and how do I fit in? And growing up in a small rural town in New Mexico made it even more challenging. To fit in, to fit in. This was a small, rural town, 32,000 population, majority Caucasian, and then Hispanic. And then here are like 10 something Indian families, that are trying to make a way through, whether it's struggle and, sacrifice. It's happening. It's happening. And it was hard. I was one of the two Indian girls growing up in high school. And within that itself, there was competition because she was the other Indian girl. I was the other Indian girl. And it was just constant, constant. So you can't help but think, yeah, where do I fit in? I don't fit in with her, but I don't fit in with them. So you know what? I'm just going to create my own space.
Did your parents support you in this? Did they understand your struggle? Did you share your struggle with anybody?
Here's what other people are doing. You have to make the good grades. You have to, you have to strive to be successful. Your focus should only be academia, right? All the social dilemmas didn't matter then. This was growing up in the 80s and 90s. Your focus was not dating or, dressing up all cute and going out. It was all about studies. But now, looking at it, I feel like they've come out of their shell and they're able to see what their children had to go through and the balance that they've had to maintain. Now back then I would be upset with my parents for not sharing things with me or, kind of guiding me through this process. But again, they're new to this country too. So how do they know what to do? I was their first child, right? So
Yes. Yeah. So I want to fast forward so fast, but let's fast forward. Now you're a child advocate, right? So walk us through, if a parent has migrated to another country with their children, what should their focus be now, with the understanding that when you migrate to a new country, there's a lot of things you're struggling with: cultural conflict, language, shock of having moved to a new place, confusion, loss of your family ties, all that good stuff is going on. And most immigrants will start with low paying job while they're trying to find their path. Doing all that, sometimes you have children to worry about. So how does a parent, or how did your parents overcome the whole thing to be able to support you? And how should parents support their children, uh, the immigrants children, through the immigration journey to get them to stabilize and to become successful in life?
you now, I think they would have asked more questions back then, but at that time they just didn't know. And a lot of the clients that we do work with here at Color Me Safe are immigrant population, and I think one of the things that I encourage our immigrant population to do is learn. Ask as many questions as you can. There's never wrong with asking a question. I'd rather ask a question and get the answer rather than just assuming. One of the things that really disappoints me here with the child welfare culture is that as immigrant families, refugee families come to the United States, yeah, you're understanding U.S. history as you get your citizenship or your green card. But what do they do if, hey, my husband is hitting me? What happens if I have a family emergency? What happens if my child protective services comes into place? These are things that they're not educated about when they come here. And those are important things to know, because if CPS comes out to a home, to an immigrant home, a family that doesn't speak the language or understands the culture here, they're just going to start assuming things. Discipline practices practiced in India or different parts of Africa or China are frowned upon here, right? But for us, it was normal growing up. To us, that was discipline out of love. It was not abuse. But there's certain investigators in this country that would not understand that and would frown upon that. So we really try to educate our immigrant population with the child welfare laws here, what to do in case this happens. And that's something that I really, really want to hone in on as Color Me Safe expands, is really focusing.
How did you find yourself in this path? That's why I'm asking this question. And the firstborn. Oh my goodness.
But life took a different direction for me for my junior year in college. I got involved in a relationship that turned into a year and a half of violence, severe violence. It was dating violence, where to the point where he almost killed me. Um, Grades went down. My hopes and dreams of becoming the doctor that my parents wanted me to become was shattered. Picked myself back up, finished up my bachelor's, graduated with honors, ended up pursuing two master's degrees in clinical psychology and counseling. And I think for me, my brush with the violence that I endured inspired me to want to go help others that are going through crisis situations, that are going through, domestic violence. And it just, that's what kind of created this path and inspired me now. And being at Child Protective Services, working there, it was a great start to my career, 10 and a half years there. But I watched a very flawed system, consisted of their shortcomings and biases. And I was watching families being screwed by the system because you didn't know the language, because you're a new immigrant here in this country, you're a refugee, or you're lower on the socioeconomic, level. And that inspired me to start up my own firm, my organization, so I can
First, thank you for what you do. Second, I am sorry you went through what you did. Third, I would be doing immigrants across the globe dishonor if I did not dig into your pain. So I'm gonna dig into your pain because this one of the fundamental things about what we do here at TIP is to really dig into giving people the tools they need to be able to overcome difficult situations. In overcoming difficult situations, we become stronger. When we're stronger, we're better people in everything that we do, and we totally believe that. So, what does being in a violent relationship, what does that look like? And how should an immigrant who is in a violent relationship with somebody they probably love deeply, how do they protect themselves and how do they get themselves out?
back in the late 90s. And going to college, I didn't know there were resources out there. I didn't know there were people that could help me, because things like this didn't happen in our community, right? And if they did, we would keep them private and brush it under the rug because it either had a stigma or a taboo on it. But now this issue of dating violence, domestic violence, is finally coming to the forefront and establishing a voice. And there's so many resources out there. There's so many people within your own circle that you can confide in, who will connect you to safe places, to safe people that will make you feel uncomfortable and safe, that you can speak with. So, but back then there wasn't. I didn't know who to talk to, and if I did tell a friend, are they going to believe me? They might just even minimize it. So I endured that pain.
Did you endure the pain out of fear of being mistrusted, or you endured the pain because it's what you had seen women do in the past?
Parents who sacrificed already so much to come here and give me a better life. And to me, in my perception was, I betrayed them by keeping this from them. And I think that's what a lot of immigrant children go through. Whenever they face a dilemma, the biggest thing in their mind is losing that love and the trust of their parents, because we don't know how to navigate.
Yeah. Okay. So there is physical abuse, mental, and sometimes actually spiritual. Walk us through the phases of what your experiences were and how you pulled yourself out.
All three. Emotional abuse, as the cycle goes, they're very charming in the beginning, they sweet nothings, this and that, and it begins to change. And this monster, he was very meticulous in the way he did things, very methodical in the way he did things. So when he did leave marks and bruises, it wasn't visible, so you couldn't see them. He would take me to certain corners of the library, pull me from my seat, and hit me. This would have been with wooden spoons, hangers, whatever he could find at that time.
So, sitting sitting across from me, you look like you've done yourself grace. You're smiling, and life is taking a different path. From our previous conversation, you've talked about your husband, and I see beautiful flowers in the picture, which I'm thinking he sent you a Valentine gift. So, thank you, sir. Now, do you find yourself sometimes when you and your husband get into it, do you find yourself with triggers that take you back, and you defend yourself in a way that is inappropriate? Do you find yourself with triggers that sometimes you attack him in a way that he does not deserve? Do you find yourself sometimes with triggers that push you to shut down because something happened that you can relate to?
Heart and in my mind,
Thank you.
I am at peace. And he's a
Tell us how you got to that point.
I think it started with me and my faith in God, in the world, and the love and support that I have around me. And it took a while. I never received any sort of therapy after what I went through. It was really the love and support of my mom and dad, and me being able to talk with them and to know and find out, wow, they were actually very, very supportive. you know I think I came at a certain level of peace when I spoke about it, when I was an MC at a gala for an organization here that serves victims of domestic violence in the South Asian population. And I was able to share my story with over 300 people that day. And this level of peace, just kind of, it hugged me that day, because I was like, man, I was able to talk about this freely. And even prior to then, I was able to talk about this freely. But to go out into a community where, you brush things under the rug, it felt great. You know, it just felt so good. And I'm hoping my story is going to, resonate with young college students, women or men. You know, if there's something is happening to you, find that someone to speak about it. Open up. Do not endure this pain alone.
Young immigrants in America specifically, and some that are under the DACA program are struggling with um, college, with funding for school. Um, they are getting in and out of relationships, and social media is playing a really big role of influencing who they perceive themselves to be. In With all the things happening in today's world, when you reach out to young immigrants, what are you saying to them in terms of them protecting themselves and taking care of themselves?
Oh, that's a great question. I do mentor some young ladies that, have been here for just a little while here in the United States. I always try to encourage them, don't listen to the noise out there. What you always see on social media may not be the truth. Own your own truth. Own who you are. Speak your own truth, not someone else's.
Color safe.
Yes.
Let's talk about color safe.
You're great, Maya. This is great.
So, what is color safe? What does that mean? How did you come up with this beautiful color safe? I I'm like, okay, I need to think bigger.
So, Color Me Safe is a family crisis management consulting firm that provides guidance and solutions in child welfare issues. So, if you look at our logo, okay, it starts off gray, and then as it expands into the safe, it gets super colorful because we come into your lives and add a little bit of color and brightness to look forward to. We are mitigating an existing crisis, whether it's child welfare, whether it's divorce and custody issues, dealing with an agency like Child Protective Services.
Beautiful. So some immigrants come to America and they father, mother, children, and it's just a different world for most of us, right? And we get lost in our pursuits and we separate. And there's a very, and I wish I had the numbers today, but there's a very high divorce rate among immigrants. Um, how are you guys facilitating children who are going through that, or how are you guys helping families that are going through that difficult time?
Absolutely. So, one of the services that we started offering back in, we launched this program in 2019. It's called Co Parenting Strategies. And because even though you're in a divorce, whether it's tumultuous, whether it's peaceful, the priority should be your child, right? So, even if you don't live in the same home, you should learn to co parent strategically for the benefit and sake and the best interest of that child, because you want that child to grow up to be a healthy adult, correct? So if we
Yes.
can mitigate some of that crisis and some of that conflict at an early age, that child's going to grow up to be a healthy kid. To know that mom and dad may not be together, but one thing they do share is that love and affection and support towards me. And those are strategies that we do teach. And a lot of our families have been immigrant families that we've been working with the last few years.
Most people say children are resilient, and I believe that children are very resilient. Um, but I also know adults who struggle from abuse when they were children. We've had guests on our show that having conversations like we have, and this is why I asked the question about triggers. Is I asked a question. I remember I had a guest who's done really really well for himself, and I asked a question that triggered something, and he went back to his childhood pain. When you're speaking with children that are going through a difficult time within their family structure, how are you guys helping them navigate that?
So this is something that I've come across the last year and a half, and I noticed it in young college students in regards to their mental health. So one of the things that we have started last year is we have created a group, and it's to really focus on mental health for young college students to come together in a safe, non-judgmental space to discuss generational trauma, things that they're currently going through. And for that age, they just want to be listened to, they want to be heard. And if they know someone is showing up, being consistent and altruistically listening, they're going to be able to, have peace with themselves.
Being a parent who's raised a teenager and a female for that, I know that it to be true. How do fast moving parents who have debt, probably trouble in their marriage, um, they're overburdened by the stress of life, how do they learn to stop themselves so that they can hear the plight of their struggling children?
That's up to the individual parents. First of all, they have to be aware. They have to realize what they're doing. They have to understand, hey, I've got a child here. It can't always be about my struggles. I need to just stop and listen and understand. Remember, there's a difference between listening and listening. And sometimes, yes, for the sake of our children and their future, we have to sometimes not just minimize our problems, but put it to the side.
Let's turn that around, right? Um, how do children look at their parents and actually see them?
Would depend on the child you're asking that to. Like, if you were asking me this as my do I see my mom and dad? When I see them, I think about sacrifice. That's the word that comes to my mind. Sacrifice. Did I always agree with them? No. Did I have conflicts? Oh yeah. Being a being a girl, oh yeah, my mom and I always bumped heads. But now I look at it and I reflect on it. I'm like, oh, they did say this for my own good. But so
Uh,
sometimes we just have to stop in our busy lives and just take a moment and reflect and listen.
what does that really, practically, what does that really look like?
You know what? I don't think there's one way to do this. Take a day or two out of the week. Spend some one-on-one time with your child and just have a conversation. Go have fun. Just through having fun, you can learn a lot about your kid.
Very good. What are some of the significant, and I mean significant challenges you faced as an immigrant, and how have these experiences influenced your approach to supporting children and families?
Wow, that's a great question. I think the struggles that I had were really within my own community, especially when it came to colorism. You know, I was always categorized, okay, I'm dark in color. So the darker I was, the less successful I would be, the less chances that I would get married. I'm sure you've heard about this bleaching cream called Fair and Lovely. It's all people use it all over the world and they still use that crap right now. And I used it for several years because I was told in my community that I would never be successful or get married because I'm not fair enough, you know. But I proved them wrong, and like I said, I always walk to the beat of my own drummer. And if I don't have a seat at the table, guess what? I'm going to put a chair in and I'm going to sit myself down and say, hey, I'm here, let's talk. So we have to create those opportunities. We can't go knocking at the door and waiting for someone to open that door. If you have the passion, if you have the heartbeat, go.
What I hear when you say fair and lovely, to me, I remember the ad on radio growing up. It did not make a lot of impact as a child, but looking back, I see how detrimental that can be. Hmm. In today's society, for me, fair and lovely is social media. How social media influencing immigrant children, and what should they be, and especially girls, should they be aware of, and what kind of protections should they embrace so that the influence of society is not really influencing who they are and what they want to become?
I think it all starts at home. It really does. What's being talked about at home, and how you see yourself as a person. There's got to be your own self-confidence, your own self-esteem. You cannot seek validation from somebody else, especially on social media. We post so many selfies, but we have little knowledge of the self, right? So are we not getting the validation at home from our own close friends and family that we have to go seek it out on social media? Because social media, these are trends. They go up and down, up and down. You have followers for one day, you don't have followers the next day. One day I'm on a high and the next day I'm on a low because I lose 2 or 3 followers. Is this the life you want to lead? That's what I have. That's the question that I want these young kids to know. Okay, it's to maintain a balance. Take the good from social media, but don't follow what you see all the time, because you have to ask yourself, is that the truth?
You're an immigrant.
Mhm.
How do you ensure that your work as an immigrant with Kalami Safe is culturally sensitive and inclusive of the diversity of communities in Dallas and across the globe?
Because I ask lots of questions. I am a nosy person and I like to learn about other cultures, other faiths, other traditions. And I think being Indian myself and coming from such a rich, diverse culture, I want to know about others as well. And I think that's what sets us apart from so many other organizations, because my team, number one, is diverse and very inclusive. Number two, we just love people and we love learning.
What inspired you to start Gauthami Safe, and how does your background as an immigrant influence your mission and values?
I want to say I want to live out the American dream. I'm not sure in this day and age that American dream exists anymore, but what I do want to do is
So,
leave a legacy for my child.
what is the American dream?
Being
Let me rephrase the question actually. When you thought you knew the American dream, what was it like and how has that changed today?
I think immigrating to this country, the American dream back then was financial success. Being able to, raise enough money to send it back to India and make enough money that way you can go back to India. I think that's what it was back then because for me, my parents' intention was to go back to India before college and go to medical school there. But they knew that would be a culture shock again after being in this country for such a long period of time. And I think for me now it's about giving back, using, our privilege that we had the opportunity of growing up in America is to give back to community, is to give back to people. And that's the way I live my life, is to give back.
So your work has a lot of community advocacy, I'm assuming.
Yes.
How should and why should immigrants become advocates in their communities?
We came, we've immigrated to a country that has given us so much. And I think in return, we should be able to give back in that way to our communities. Paying it forward is how I see it.
In today's America and across the globe, there is a lot of child abuse going on,
Mm-hmm.
and trafficking. What are some of the signs that friends, parents, family members should be looking for to identify if one among them is going through abuse or getting close to um, being stolen away from their families?
That's a great question, and we can be here for 2 days if we want to talk about that. There's a number of signs from emotional to physical to mental that you have to look for. You have to look at patterns. You have to look at visible marks and bruises. You have to look at, the way they're functioning in school, what they're saying in school, what they're seeing at home. So there's a variety of signs to look for, and that would be a great another another episode right there because I can talk and talk about this. But, you know, I think it's really, again, even if you're a teacher in school, listen to what your student is saying, look for patterns, observe them, watch them. Yes, you're in a class of 20 something to 30 people, but still it's your responsibility as a teacher, as a parent, to pick up on these signs. Remember, children are not a side project, they're a responsibility.
Your team, how do you prepare them on a day-to-day basis to deal with the pain they come through, and how do you psychologically support them so that they can be effective and efficient in what they do on a daily basis?
Number one, my door is always open. I'm always here to listen to them. I think, besides being a team, we have a friendship outside of Color Me Safe. We've all known each other since we've worked at Child Protective Services. My dream is to build a dream team here for us. And when we leave work, let's leave work. Let's not talk about it. Let's get involved in other activities that bring us joy, that bring us happiness, whether it's sitting on the couch watching Netflix or, going to learn how to dance or, going to the movies. Do something that's going to balance out your day.
Why is Child Services a relevant organization?
Child services, well, there I think it's really important to have a system where we protect the rights of children. Children have their rights as well, and when such cases of abuse and neglect happen, we as responsible adults need to go out and investigate and understand why this is happening, because we are violating a child's rights. And to having these systems, though not perfect systems, need to be in place. Do some need to be broken down and rebuilt? Absolutely, because I feel like some of these systems are built to fail people and families. And if we have other advocacy groups such as Color Me Safe to help families navigate and educate them what on their rights are, I think, things can be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of one right now. It'll come to me. But I think things can be a little bit under control, let's just say, when we have such systems in place.
Can you share an example, a story of how Kalami Safe has made a positive impact on the lives of children and families in Dallas? But before you do that, please tell our listeners where they can find you on social media and how they can access Kalami Safe resources.
Absolutely. So, Color Me Safe, we have our consulting firm. You can visit our website, www.colormesafe.net. For those individuals that do not have the economic funds to retain us, we also have colormesafefoundation.org, which is the nonprofit arm of Color Me Safe. And we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. Just type in Color Me Safe and we'll pop up.
Okay. And share with us a positive impact of lives you have
Yeah,
changed.
absolutely. So, several years ago, probably around 3 or 4 years ago, there was a Hispanic family here locally that was trying to adopt a child from China. And as we were doing the background checks and everything, the lawyer got involved, and there was a conclusion on a case where the father in this particular case had a reason to believe on his own child. Reason to believe in CPS world means that there was substantiating evidence to say that abuse and neglect occurred. Well, that attorney that was representing them hired us because CPS was involved and they wanted us to analyze the case. So it took us about a week to analyze the case. We dissected it from the beginning of the investigation to the end of the investigation, and we found lots of discrepancies, even to the point where that investigator was falsifying information in this particular CPS case, which prevented this father in this case to adopt that child from China. And then once we got involved and presented it in court, presented it to the lawyer, we found out that the investigator, in fact, did lie on this case. So guess what? That disposition was overturned and they were able to adopt that child from China.
Migrating to the US sometimes can be difficult for most people, and specifically for those who come through the southern border. What are some of the experiences you've heard that immigrants struggle with that your organization has been able to come in and offer some solutions?
Unfortunately, at this point, no one has contacted us for children that have been crossing the border. No one, we haven't been involved in that capacity yet. We would like to, but at the same time, there are so many organizations out there that are willing to help. But if we were called upon, trust me, we would act in a second.
Excellent. Talk to us about your experiences at Child Services. You worked there for about 10 years, right?
10.5 years. Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
It had its moments, some good, some bad. Um, let's say it was a learning experience, and I will only speak about the good that I learned, because every public sector has its up and downs, and you
You
take.
are holding back. And so that's not allowed here. We don't hold back. And I'm going to tell you why we don't hold back, right? If
Okay,
I'm a parent who goes to child services and they fail me, or my expectation is not what it is, I need to know how to deal with that, right?
sure.
And I feel like by being kind to your former employer, you're failing the immigration population in America, and let's go for it.
It
They're not writing
has
your check anymore, are they?
no, they're not.
Okay.
It definitely has its share of pitfalls. It has its share of shortcomings. I've seen the system screw families over, and frankly, it pisses me off. It really, really does. I felt that there was no place to grow. I felt like it's a system that was set up to fail individuals, fail families, fail our children. Our foster care system right now is completely screwed up. There's kids that are sleeping all over the place, and something needs to change. And I feel like they try to bring in positive changes, but that pendulum just keeps rocking back and forth, back and forth. It works for a little bit and then it stops working. So are we looking at the overall picture? And it could definitely use improvements. And I think towards the end there, I was done. I was really, really done. I was part of a very integral department of the program, and out of the blue, they tell 10 of us that were selected by the state of Texas that worked this program, we're dissolving the program. You either take a demotion or you leave. After we gave you guys over 10 years of our lives, you're telling us that these are our options. So yeah, I left pretty ticked off. But at the same time, you know what? It opened my career for greater and bigger things that we're doing right
Very good. This is the power of the immigrant. We always find ways to innovate, right?
now. Yeah.
But let's delve into one of those failures in America that really gets under my skin specifically is the foster care program.
Okay.
In your experience,
Mm-hmm.
does it make sense to for policymakers to look at the foster care system and revamp it, and especially for the new world, or should we just terminate it because it's failed? Really?
I think it needs to be completely destroyed and revamped. It needs to be reestablished again. What are we doing? We're failing our kids. We can do better. This country's made up of so many smart policymakers. Why can't we create this change and stick with it? We're failing our kids.
Do
And
you
we
think
mhm.
it's the responsibility of the government to fix the foster care system, or it's the responsibility of the electorate?
Oh wow, a little bit of both. I think everybody needs to be involved. I think people also need to hear from people, foster care families. We need to hear from people that worked at Child Protective Services. We need to hear from child advocates. We need to hear from the children who've aged out of foster care as well. That input and insight would be totally valuable, and hearing their experiences,
I,
that would
I I appreciate your insight, and forgive me, I don't want to sound rude, um, but I you're professional, right? And looking into you, there was a lot of good that I saw you doing. And so when I was introducing our show, I said I want us to go for the radical solutions and for the radical change we want without fear or intimidation, right? The foster care system has failed. You agree the foster care system has failed. And so I asked you a question on, was the foster care system failure a responsibility of policymakers or the electorate?
mm-hmm,
And your answer was nice. It's the white covering that Americans have become very good at, right? It's the failed immigration policy that for the last 20 years I've had people and policymakers say, oh, we give me your votes and I'm gonna change
mm-hmm.
the immigration process, right? What's the solution? Really, without saying, hey, we need to hear from parents. I mean, can we just not gnaw at the possibility of a solution? Can we really come up with an actual solution as a
I can't.
nation?
Can we? That's a question I have for everybody. Can we come up with a solution? Look what our government is. We look at the two candidates right now, and it makes me cringe. It makes me cringe. It really does. And yeah, I have a responsibility to vote. And honestly, I don't want to. I don't want to right now because it just tears me apart to know that we have two candidates that are up there that have become the laughing stock of this country and this world.
So the other day, I had a really interesting recording with an immigrant who's really huge on community advocacy, right? And so I asked you a question earlier on community advocacy, and I really think in this day and age, politicians cannot be the solution for us, at least from the world I come from. I come from the world of business, right? And for me, business is such a beautiful tapestry of solving solutions because we look at a problem and then we creatively find a way to make a profit out of that problem. And there's no way you're going to make a profit if you're not solving a problem in business. Government does not function like that, right? And so looking at the situation of, and I don't want us to get lost in our conversation, which was we're talking about child services in one point and the other the failed foster system, right? I say that because, okay, so let me backtrack a little bit. So I'm going to share you with you a story, right? This is it's my beautiful wife. For many years before we discovered counseling, she struggled with pain from her childhood. Not that she was in foster care system, but she did struggle with the pain, and now she's learned the tools to overcome that. But we also have friends who were raised in the foster care system, and just hanging out with them, you notice certain things that they're struggling with that really come from their childhood. And so when a system like the foster care system is failing, these children are becoming adults that are not able to perform and function in society correctly, or at least to their peak. And so my concern becomes, when does a society take a pause and say this is not working, and from a community point of view, we need to look at this and change it completely?
And I think that's going to take a while because you know that there's a problem. If you want to change it, you have to be willing to get out there, vocalize it, and learn to change it. But do we have enough voices out there that are speaking out for this? You know, the
Do we
government,
have any voices?
there are voices, but do we have enough? Do we have enough? Are we solely, oh, well, let's try to have a little bit more faith in the government? You think they're doing anything? Legislation keeps changing, rules keep changing. Do I have faith in them? No, I don't. So it's going to be left to us. Do we need to privatize complete foster care system around the world and not depend on the government? Because obviously they're not taking care of it if there's so many changes. But again, the question is, how many voices out there, how many powerful voices are going to get out there and speak up and speak out?
What's your appeal to the immigrant community?
My appeal to the immigrant community when it comes to child welfare is to learn about it. How can you bring awareness to somebody else when you're not educated about it yourself, right? I'll just take this for an example. There's all these galas every year, right? For whatever mission, for whatever organization. You get dressed up, you put your makeup on, you put a tie on, your tux on, and you go. But let me ask you this: do you know what you're here for? You're writing a check, but do you know what you're here for? What's domestic violence? Huh, interesting. So, how do you talk about and be a vehicle to that mission when you yourself don't know what it's about, but you're writing a check? Why? So I can put my name on the wall? So I can put my name in the program? What are you really there for? And that's my question to a lot of people. Even when I sit on nonprofit boards, am I really just filling the seat, or am I a soldier on the ground actually carrying out the mission and doing the work? I don't want to fill a seat. I don't want to drop people's names on who I know and what network I have and how much money I can bring to the table. No, I want to carry out the mission. That's what you use me for. That's why I join a board, not to lift myself up and and ask for accolades and this and that. That's not why I exist. That's not why God put me on this earth.
What are some of the key lessons you've learned through your work that could help immigrants become successful in raising their children?
So many, Martin, listening, understanding, and being there and showing up for them. Don't just say you're going to do it and not do it because they're depending on you. You know, if there's a family that I'm working with, I'm going to see it right through, completely through, from the very beginning to the very end. If I'm working on a case, it's not for me to just close a file and get the check, right? No, I want to know that they are leading a healthy life after we do close the case. To me, that's far more worth than a paycheck, is to know that they are okay and they stay united.
At Color Safe, what does success look like?
When our families come back to us a month or two later, or even a year later, saying, thank you. To me, that's the most rewarding, to know that we were able to help them, to know that we were able to mitigate a crisis. Because obviously, we don't exist because social work doesn't have a whole lot of money. It's not about the money, it's about the change that we're creating. Because if it was for the money, I would have hung up my jacket a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, How does Color Safe engage immigrant communities that are struggling with child welfare?
Sure.
And how do you guys help them become successful at what they do?
I think, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, Color Me Safe now has the nonprofit arm, which is the Color Me Safe Foundation. And, you know, being South Asian and being raised in this country, I've seen the tug of war, the cultural disconnect, the communication disconnects between families and their children. So we're trying to create initiatives to bridge these gaps and fill these gaps in. Two of the new initiatives we're about to launch at the end of this month is one is called Ask Auntie. And auntie, I don't know how it is in Kenya, but you know, you refer to an older mom's friend as an auntie. And for me, growing up, auntie had a negative connotation because it was the gossipy auntie, the auntie that would talk about you, this and that. So we're trying to create a support group for teens that are in junior high and middle school. It's a support group to really understand, you know, what issues that they're going through, what issues they are facing. How could we build a bridge between them and their parents because of the cultural and generation disconnect? So that's for teenagers. And then for parents, we have identified predominantly South Asian neighborhoods. We're going to create another support group for parents, and that's called Sati Support Group. And Sati in our language means friend. So we're trying to create these initiatives so we can build that bridge within our immigrant families.
In your day-to-day activity, supporting children
Mm-hmm.
and broken families sometimes, what does working with organizations that do the type of work you do, what does that look like?
It's a collaborative effort, should never be a competition. We're here for the same reason. It's, you know, to help families and to help children. And if we build these positive and collaborative relationships, I think our impact would be stronger together.
What are some of the key lessons you are learning as you go on a daily basis that could help other child welfare nonprofits organizations thrive and become successful at doing what they do?
I think learning about the community that we're living in, you know, understanding the statistics, understanding, you know, the depth and what really child welfare is. I think that that's a good start right there, you know? And I think working together with whether it's the community, whether it's other organizations that kind of align with our mission and understanding what they do as well, I think it definitely helps on some level.
Gauthami, tell us one more time where we can find you on social media and where we can find your
Absolutely.
work.
So the Color Me Safe website is www.colormesafe.net. And then our foundation's website is www.colormesafefoundation.org. You can find us again on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
And your handles are going to be down on this podcast notes. Now, that's interesting that you say that. What are your future goals for Color Me Safe, and how do you plan to expand your impact on children, families, particularly those from immigrant backgrounds?
So, you ready for this? My long term vision is to have a shelter for women and children of immigrant families and hopefully open a home for foster care kids. That is my long term vision. And each year, I'm one of those that I can't swallow more than what I can chew. So I take like little baby steps. One year I'll add this, the next year I will add this. So I do have a long term vision. I strongly believe in what we're doing. I strongly feel that we are creating a positive change in this community. And I hope we continue to do that. And I'm in the process of building this amazing dream team, which has begun. So super excited for all the great things to come. I'm very
Congrat
humbled by it too.
Congratulations. And if there's
Thank you.
anything we can do to support you in that endeavor at TIP, please let us know. That
I
way we
will.
can be part of this beautiful vision.
Would love that.
Based on your experiences, what advice would you give to other immigrants who want to make a positive impact in their new communities?
Get out there. Just get out there. If there's something that you want to do, just get out there and do it. Don't wait on somebody else, and don't wait on, okay, if I want to do something, it has to be perfect before I do it. Just go out and do it. Take that risk.
Excellent. Thank you so much. What
Thank
else
you.
should we know?
We got into a lot of different things, Martin. Brutal. I'm just joking.
Fast too, right?
Fast too. But
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
thank you for this opportunity and giving me this platform to share my story. I think what you guys are doing and highlighting and amplifying our immigrant voices is so important. So thank you for that.
Of course. Thank you. Hey, look, I truly admire what you're doing. It's tough work. And on behalf of the many families that you work with out there, um, here our gratitude. Thank you. I know your team maybe probably doesn't hear it quite often, but remind them that we're grateful for what they do and how they're supporting immigrants across America. May I ask a favor? Remind our audience, and especially teenagers, if they are going through an abusive relationship, if they are being bullied, how do they seek for help? How do the others identify that their friend is in trouble?
Oh, there's so many ways we can talk about this. Talk to somebody, go approach the school counselor, approach the teacher. Number one, also talk with your mom and dad, let them know what's going on. Reach out to somebody that you truly trust. If we want to get into the depths of this, Martin, we can be here for another 2 days when it comes to bullying prevention and intervention. But know that there is help out there, and you just have to get the courage to go out there and talk with someone.
Suicide is really high right now and among immigrant teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Give us something, anything.
Oh man, it all starts at home. It all starts at home. What's happening at home? In the last 3 to 4 years, we've had a few suicides within the South Asian community. Mental health, low self-esteem, being bullied. No one was listening to them. And when they did talk, it was ignored. So I think we need to have these uncomfortable conversations at home to get comfortable. And when it comes to the South Asian community, I'm just going to say this. We are so focused on academia, academia, academia. But when it comes to these social issues and problems, we fail. We fail completely. And I think we need to learn as immigrant families navigating the American world that we have to have these important conversations at home.
Ms. Gauthami, you've been fantastic.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for making time
Thank
for
you.
us. I am so grateful, and I hope one of these fine days we can get to have a conversation again.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I feel like I have a new friend now.
Definitely, definitely, you do,
Thank
right?
you.
And again, if there's any way the Immigrant Podcast we can support you, please feel free to reach out to us.
Perfect. I hope this was okay.
It was fantastic. You've given immigrants a lot of little nuggets, like Sam said, that they can utilize to put together their family and remain strong and be successful in life. And that's what the Immigrant Podcast is all about.
Absolutely. And you know what, Martin, I'd be happy because I know you guys, speak with the immigrant population. You have those connections. And if anybody needs help, I'm happy to share our resources with you. So if someone contacts you, you can say, hey, this organization can help you and assist you. And then we'll do what we can to help.
We're putting all those resources together.
Yeah, I will send those before the end of the day today. So
Excellent. Thank you so, so very much.
thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Have,
Take
have a
care.
great day. You too. Bye
You
bye.
too. Bye bye.